Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. Skycommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by skycommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show that cuts through the noise to get you straight to the insights you need. Just look up these days, and you'll see our skies buzzing with more than just birds and planes. Drones they seem to be everywhere, performing these incredible feats, inspecting pipelines, surveying vast agricultural fields, delivering vital supplies. You name it. It's a really exciting expansion pushing boundaries, but, with this incredible growth comes new complexities and critically new safety considerations for our shared airspace.
You're absolutely right. The skies are certainly getting busier. And as these unmanned aircraft become more prevalent, more versatile, the question of how they safely coexist with traditional manned aviation becomes, absolute paramount.
Yeah.
That's precisely where detect and avoid, or DAA, steps in.
Okay.
You should think of DAA as the essential operational and regulatory framework that ensures these drones can reliably spot and then safely navigate around manned aircraft, other drones, obstacles on the ground, really any potential hazard.
So it's like the drone's version of a pilot looking out the window.
Exactly. It's essentially the drone equivalent of a pilot's vigilant eyes on the sky, but often with a significant technological twist.
That's a great way to put it. And today, our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the core rules that govern DAA. We want to explore the two distinct legal pathways for compliance, delve into some really critical numerical limits numbers you really need to know, and uncover some of the surprising nuances of how DAA actually works in practice. We're particularly going to zero in on how this all functions for the exciting and rapidly expanding world of beyond visual line of sight, or BVLOS operations, especially here in Canada.
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting.
Our goal is basically to give you a shortcut to understanding these, let's face it, complex regulations, make you well-informed and truly prepared for this evolving landscape of drone ops. We've extracted the most important nuggets of knowledge from a whole range of sources, regulatory docs, expert insights to bring you this comprehensive look.
And, even if you're not actively flying drones yourself, maybe not even a pilot, you'll probably find the principles of DAA pretty fascinating. They really reflect universal safety challenges, blending inherent human skill and judgment with cutting-edge technology. It's really a testament to how aviation continually adapts and innovates, while always upholding its core, non-negotiable commitment to safety for everyone in the air.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational concept then. Moving from what pilots always called see and avoid to this new detect and avoid. You mentioned DAA isn't some brand new idea that just popped up with drones.
Not at all. That's a crucial distinction and a really important historical link to understand. If you go all the way back, way back to the early days of aviation, even World War I dogfights, pilots were visually scanning for enemy aircraft or other traffic.
Right, just looking out.
Exactly. That same basic principle of pilots using their own eyes to spot and avoid other traffic, that's been deeply codified in aviation regulations for manned aircraft for decades. Here in Canada, for instance, it's a fundamental responsibility outlined in the Canadian Aviation Regulations, the CARS. Specifically, Part 6, Section 602.19. Manned aircraft pilots are, constantly scanning the skies, and it's their primary responsibility to see and avoid any potential conflicts.
Understood. That see and avoid makes perfect sense when you've got a human pilot, eyeballs physically scanning the horizon. But when drones started pushing those boundaries, flying beyond the pilot's direct line of sight, that BVLOS stuff we keep mentioning, regulators, faced a fundamental question, didn't they?
They absolutely did.
If there's no pilot physically looking out the window, how do we ensure that same level of vigilance for other aircraft? What was the answer?
That question precisely was the catalyst. It directly led to the development and implementation of detect and avoid requirements specifically for unmanned aircraft systems. At its core, DAA is simply defined as the ability for a drone system, and crucially its crew, to reliably detect other aircraft, obstacles, terrain, any hazard really, in its operational area.
Okay.
And then react to them proactively and safely to ensure proper separation. You detect by seeing it, whether with human eyes or sensors, and you avoid it by taking appropriate action. It sounds simple in principle, but it gets incredibly complex in practice, especially for an unmanned system operating without a human physically on board.
So if you've ever flown even a basic or advanced drone, you've probably already done some form of DAA without even knowing the official term.
Almost certainly.
Think about it. If you've ever heard a helicopter buzzing nearby while you're flying your drone and you immediately decided, okay, better land this thing or move it way out of the way.
Right.
You just performed a detect and avoid maneuver. It's that fundamental just don't hit anything mentality.
Right.
But scaled up for these more complex operations.
It truly is. And this brings us to one of the most non-negotiable, absolutely universal rules in drone aviation.
Okay, what's that?
Drone pilots never have right-of-way over manned aircraft. Period. Never. This isn't just a suggestion. It's deeply enshrined in Canadian regulations, CARS 901.17 and 901.18 specifically. And it's a rule that applies across Canada, the USA, pretty much everywhere globally. If you encounter any other aircraft in your operational area, you must terminate or cease your drone operation until it's absolutely safe to continue. There's no debate, no negotiation. Manned aircraft always, without exception, have priority.
Okay, that's crystal clear. To help remember this process, is there like a simple loop or something?
Yeah, a really useful way to think about it is the DAA loop, Detect, Assess, Act.
Detect, Assess, Act.
It's the fundamental three-step mental and operational process for managing any potential hazard. Doesn't matter if it's executed by human operators and their team or by, highly automated, sophisticated systems on board the drone itself. First, you detect the potential conflict. You become aware of it. Simple enough. Second, you assess the risk it poses. Is it getting closer? Is it on a collision course? What's its speed, its altitude? What's the actual threat level? And third, you act to mitigate that risk. That could mean changing altitude, altering course, maybe even immediately landing the drone. This loop is what keeps our skies safe. It demands constant vigilance, whether human or machine.
That mnemonic, detect, assess, act really captures the essence. And connecting this to the bigger picture, DAA is, it sounds absolutely critical for integrating drones safely, right?
Absolutely critical. It ensures that this increasing integration of unmanned aircraft into the National Airspace System, or NAS, can happen safely without causing conflicts. The ultimate goal is always to maintain what's known as clear separation between all aircraft, manned or unmanned, to prevent any risk of collision. This is exactly why organizations like NASA Ames Research Center are working so diligently on defining minimum operational performance standards. And not just for the drones detect and avoid systems, but also for the ground control stations, and importantly, the UAS pilots' own performance and how they interact with the system. They're trying to understand and optimize that whole human-machine interface in this evolving equation.
Now, here's where it gets particularly interesting, especially for those listening who are looking to push the boundaries to fly BVLOS. Canada has recently introduced what sounds like a real game-changing framework for these operations.
Indeed. The April 1st, 2025 implementation of Division 6 and CARS Part 9s is truly a landmark moment for Canadian drone operations. Big step forward. It created what we now call the Level 1 Complex Framework, and crucially, established two distinct legal pathways for achieving BVLOS DAA compliance.
Two pathways.
And this framework, it's deliberately designed as a step-up pathway. The idea is to allow operators to initially comply using more crew-based DAA solutions relying on people, and then, as technology matures and these sophisticated systems get certified, they can scale up to more advanced declared DAA systems. It kind of acknowledges the current state of technology while clearly paving the way for future innovations and capabilities.
Let's dive into that first path then. Path 1, vision-based detect and avoid, which is detailed in Standard 923. This sounds like the human-centric approach, where trained visual observers, or VOs, play an absolutely crucial role.
That's right. You can think of it like the manual mode in a flight sim, maybe. It relies heavily on human perception, sharp judgment, crystal clear communication between the crew members.
So what exactly is the VO's role? What do they have to do?
In this model, the visual observer's role is quite demanding, and it's precisely defined in the regulations. VOs must maintain a continuous unaided visual scan of the airspace surrounding the drone.
Continuous unaided scan.
Unaided, exactly.
Yeah.
No binoculars, no fancy scopes for the official scan, and they have to provide reliable, timely communication to the pilot. Their entire job is basically to be the human eyes on the sky, constantly looking for airplanes, helicopters, any other potential conflicts that could endanger the operation. And this isn't just a casual glance around. It's an active, focused duty that requires specialized training and sustained attention.
And there are strict distance requirements tied to the VO, right? Those sound crucial.
Very crucial. For what we call extended visual line of sight, or EVLOS operations, that's under CARS 901.75, a VO has to be positioned within 2 nautical miles of the remotely piloted aircraft, the RPA. Now, under the new standard 923 for BVLOS operations, that 2 nautical mile limit from the VO to the RPA remains a hard cap.
Still 2 NM.
Still 2 NM. So, while you can potentially daisy chain multiple VOs to effectively extend your overall operational area further from the pilot, each individual VO still has to be within that 2 NM radius of the drone at all times. That's to ensure they can realistically detect threats and communicate them in time.
Got it. And what about flying FPV first-person view? You know, with the goggles on, does that change the VO requirement?
A crucial point, and honestly one that Transport Canada loves to use as an exam trap.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even when you're flying FPV with goggles, a visual observer is always required and must be scanning the sky unaided. The regulations, specifically SARS 901.38, make it absolutely clear. FPV goggles never replace actual human eyeballs scanning the sky. Not even at night when your drone has lights.
Even with lights? Wow.
Even with lights specifically designed for night visibility. It's a really common misconception that trips up a lot of new operators. So remember, a VO is always your go-to for sky awareness in FPV, scanning unaided.
Okay, so for vision-based DAA, it's not just about having VOs, but operating within a very strict set of parameters. Expert, what's the most concise way for listeners to remember the key numerical and environmental limits they absolutely must know for standard 923?
Right, if there's one key thing to really burn into your memory for vision-based DAA, it's the 423-1005 plus SUI envelope.
423-1005 plus SU and OK.
Okay, that's a mouthful. Let's break it down.
It is, but it's basically the entire operational world for standard 923, and each number represents a critical limit. So let's break it down piece by piece.
All right, lay it on us. What's the 4?
The 4 refers to the RPA to pilot distance. The drone must be no further than 4 nautical miles from the pilot's control station.
4 NM, pilot to drone.
Correct. The key insight here is that VOs don't grant you unlimited range from the pilot. This is a hard limit, specifically designed to ensure the pilot can maintain effective command and control. It busts that misconception that just having VOs means you can fly as far as your signal reaches.
Got it. 4 NM to the pilot. And the deal. The 2 is for the RPA to nearest VO distance. The drone must be no further than 2 nautical miles from the nearest visual observer.
Okay, 2 NM, drone to the closest VO.
Exactly. This is critical because it ensures the VO can realistically detect threats, see that small plane, for example, and communicate them to the pilot in time to take evasive action. And like we said, while daisy chaining VOs can extend your overall operational area, those individual 2 NM limits still apply to each VO's line of sight to the drone.
So 4 to the pilot, 2 to the VO. What about the 3?
The 3 refers to visibility. Ground visibility must be greater than or equal to 3 statute miles.
3 statute miles, not nautical.
Statute miles for visibility, that's the standard aviation convention here. And this isn't just a suggestion, it's a baseline BVLOS weather minimum under CARS 901.343. It really busts that misconception that having VOs somehow negates basic aviation weather rules. For a quick mnemonic on that, you could think BVLOS 3C, that's 3SM visibility, and the C stands for clear of cloud.
Ah, BVLOS 3C. Nice. And the 1,000? That sounds like an altitude.
Precisely. The 1,000 is for the cloud ceiling. It must be greater than or equal to 1,000 feet AGL, above ground level.
1,000 feet ceiling minimum.
Right. And for level 1 complex operations, where drones generally fly up to a maximum of 400 feet AGL, this means your cloud ceiling needs to be more than double your maximum flight height. It ensures there's sufficient vertical space for both the drone and any potential manned aircraft to maneuver safely beneath the clouds.
And that can be a real challenge in practice, right? Like out in the field, how do you accurately judge cloud height without reference points?
Absolutely. It's tricky. In non-built-up areas especially, judging cloud height without visible references can be very difficult. Pilots often have to rely on tools like graphical forecast areas, the GFAs, or sometimes use local terrain height if it's visible, for instance. If you can clearly see the top of a 2,000-foot mountain nearby, then you know the cloud base must be at least 2,000 feet AGL. It really requires careful pre-flight planning and a good understanding of the local meteorology.
Okay, now here's a really strict one you mentioned, the 5. What's that about? This sounds tiny.
It is tiny. The 5 refers to visual obstructions. Any obstructions in the VO's designated scanning quadrant, think tall trees, hills, even buildings or cranes, cannot exceed 5 degrees above the horizon.
5 degrees? That's incredibly small. Like, what does that look like?
It's barely perceptible. To give you a sense of scale, it's like looking at a 15-meter tall barn, maybe 50 feet high, that's about 175 meters or roughly 575 feet away. It's a very small angle. The reason it's so strict is to prevent any terrain or structures from masking conflict aircraft that the VO absolutely needs to see.
Wow. Is there a trick to estimate that?
Yeah, here's a fundamental trick or a practical field trick. Your fist held out at arm's length is roughly 10 degrees wide across the knuckles. So half a fist width is approximately 5 degrees. It's that precise. And it highlights just how critical an unobstructed view is for the VO.
Half a fist. Okay, I'll remember that. And finally, the SUNOK part of the envelope. I'm guessing that has everything to do with glare.
Yeah, you're spot on. The SUNOK ensures the sun's position doesn't compromise the VO's ability to see effectively. The rule states the sun must be outside the VO's designated scanning quadrant.
Okay.
Or it must be greater than or equal to 45 degrees above the horizon, so high enough not to be blinding.
High in the sky, right.
Or it must be below the horizon, which obviously applies to night operations, where you're using lights instead of relying on daylight visibility. This rule is meticulously designed to prevent sun glare from blinding the visual observer, which would clearly compromise their primary duty to detect threats.
Yeah, you definitely don't want your VO squinting directly into the sun.
Exactly. You know, if your VO looks like they're auditioning for the Lion King sunrise scene because they're staring right into the sun, that's probably not compliant.
Huh. Good visual. So, while this vision-based DAA is practical, especially maybe for getting started with level 1 complex flight reviews, it does sound like it has some inherent limitations.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It effectively makes BVLOS a multi-crew operation. Because remember, it's beyond visual line of sight to the pilot, but not to the crew. And visual observers, like any human performing a repetitive, high-stakes visual task, can definitely suffer from fatigue over time. Communication errors between the VO and pilot are always a risk, too. Both fatigue and comms errors can significantly reduce detection performance.
So how do operators manage that fatigue?
Well, to mitigate this, often rotational shifts, maybe swapping VOs every 20 to 30 minutes, are needed to maintain truly sharp eyes. I've seen situations where even experienced VOs can experience what's sometimes called tunnel vision, or just a significant drop in their detection rate after even a short time if they're not supported by good procedures, scheduled breaks, and maybe other crew members helping out. It's a real human factors challenge that demands very careful operational planning.
Okay, so that's path 1, relying on human eyes, their incredible perception, but also their inherent fallibility. But what about path 2? This is declared detect and avoid under standard 922.10, and it sounds like a far more tech-based approach.
It is fundamentally different, yes. This path relies on the drone system or equipment itself meeting specific, quite rigorous performance requirements, rather than relying primarily on human visual observation. It's more like the auto mode of a flight sim, perhaps. With integrated system alerts and automated compliance features designed right into the drone platform itself, for an operation to follow this path, your specific remotely piloted aircraft system model, the drone and its ground station, must have a declaration against standard 922.10. This declaration basically proves that its sensors, its alerting capabilities, and its avoidance performance meet specified system risk ratios, or SRRs, for detecting occupied air traffic.
System risk ratios, SRRs. Okay, so it's not just a general, it works well expectation, but specific numerical thresholds they have to meet. Can you elaborate on these SRRs? What are the exact numbers, and what do they signify for different kinds of airspace?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The SRRs are quite precise and tied to the airspace risk. For higher risk airspace contexts designated as ARCC, which typically includes things like Class G airspace below 1,500 feet AGL, where more traffic might be expected. The system risk ratio for mid-air collision must be less than or equal to 0.33.
0.33, that sounds pretty low, pretty strict.
It was a very stringent requirement, yes. Now, for operations in lower density airspace designated as ARCB, think Class G airspace more than 5 nautical miles away from any published aerodrome, where traffic is generally less dense. The SRR requirement is slightly relaxed, but still tough. It must be less than or equal to 0.66.
Okay, 0.66 for lower risk. Where do these numbers actually come from? Are they just arbitrary?
Not at all arbitrary. They are derived directly from extensive analysis of manned aviation mid-air collision data over many years. The goal is to ensure that the RPAS collision risk, when operating under these standards, is equivalent to the already established and accepted safety baselines in manned aviation. It's all about maintaining a consistent high level of safety across the entire airspace, regardless of whether the aircraft is crewed or uncrewed.
That makes sense. Maintain the overall safety level. Now, what happens if this declared DAA system, this sophisticated tech setup, fails mid-mission? Are there specific rules or expectations for how that's handled?
Absolutely, and this is another crucial area and definitely something that could show up on an exam. Standard 922.1an mandates exactly how DAA system failures must be tolerated and managed. An unenunciated loss of DAA function, meaning a silent failure, the system breaks but gives no warning or alert to the pilot. A dangerous kind. Exactly, the really dangerous kind. That must have an extremely remote probability. To give you context, in aviation safety terms, extremely remote is a probability so incredibly low, it's often described as less likely than being struck by lightning and winning the lottery on the exact same day.
Wow, okay, extremely remote.
Then there's an enunciated loss of DAA function. This is where the system detects the failure and alerts the pilot. This must have a remote probability. Still very unlikely, but statistically more probable than an unenunciated failure.
Okay, still unlikely, but the system tells you.
Right. And the critical implication here for operators is that your operations manual must include robust, well-defined procedures for exactly what happens if your detect avoid suite fails mid-mission. You cannot simply continue a BVLOS operation without DAA capability if that's what your approval relies on. Immediate pre-planned action is required according to your manual.
So it sounds like these two paths, declared DAA, the tech, and vision-based DAA, the people, are pretty distinct in how they achieve safety. Do they ever cross over, or are they completely independent for a given flight?
They interact in a very specific, mutually exclusive way for any given flight operation. If you are operating under Standard 923, the vision-based approach with VOs, you do not need a 922.10 declaration for that specific operation. The people and procedures are your DAA system.
Okay, that makes sense.
However, and this is important, if your operations manual claims compliance with Standard 922.10 for a particular type of mission, meaning you're relying on the declared tech, then you must meet those stringent technical requirements for that mission. There's no switching mid-mission from relying on your declared system to suddenly just relying on human VOs without proper authorization and predefined procedures in your OM.
So you can't just fall back on VOs if the tech fails unless that fallback is part of your approved plan.
Precisely. It highlights a key distinction. Declared DAA compliance rests firmly on the inherent capabilities of the aircraft and its integrated systems. Vision-based DAA compliance, on the other hand, rests on the performance of people and documented procedures. They are fundamentally different paradigms for achieving the same overarching safety goal of detect and avoid.
All right, let's move into some essential rules, common scenarios, and maybe some of those sneaky traps that Transport Canada might use to check if you truly understand the nuances. First up, we need to hammer home that unwavering right-of-way rule again, because it really is the foundation of everything DAA.
It truly cannot be stressed enough. That yield and clear principle is absolutely non-negotiable. You must give way under CARS 901.17, and you must never create a collision risk under CARS 901.18 to all manned aircraft.
And all really means all, right? Not just airplanes.
All means all. This includes helicopters, gliders, ultralights, hot air balloons, even skydivers actively under parachute. It doesn't matter if you think you were first in the circuit or flying perfectly legally within your approved airspace, you yield, period. Regardless of flight rules or maneuverability, manned aircraft always have absolute priority. Always.
So let's paint a picture. Scenario. You're on a routine drone mission, maybe inspecting a remote cell tower. Everything's going smoothly under your approved plan. And suddenly, a medevac helicopter appears out of nowhere, flying low and fast, heading towards your operational area. What's your immediate, non-negotiable action?
Your action must be immediate and decisive, exactly as laid out in your documented emergency procedures for encountering manned aircraft. This means instantly giving way. Typically, you descend rapidly or offset your flight path well away from the helicopter's projected path, or maybe even land your drone immediately if that's the safest way to ensure maximum separation.
And this applies even if you have a fancy declared DAA system alerting you.
Absolutely. Even if you have a top-of-the-line declared DAA system actively alerting you to the helicopter's presence and trajectory, the ultimate responsibility for collision avoidance always remains squarely with you, the pilot. The technology is a tool to aid detection and assessment, but you make the final critical safety decision and take the necessary action.
I see. So DAA isn't just about spotting other traffic. It's also about ensuring your own drone doesn't become a hazard itself, especially when unexpected things happen, like, say, you lose the control link.
That's a very important point and a critical component of robust DAA planning. CARS 901.23 specifically requires you to have and rigorously follow both normal and emergency procedures for DAA. This explicitly includes detailed procedures for managing a lost link event and, if necessary, flight termination. The pilot is ultimately responsible for ensuring these procedures are followed at all times.
Okay, so let's walk through a detailed lost link scenario. Say you're operating 2 nautical miles from a busy rural heliport, doing an agricultural survey, maybe under Standard 923 with a VO. Suddenly, your control station shows link lost. Your operations manual specifies a lost link procedure. The drone should autonomously hold its position for 30 seconds, then descend at a controlled rate to 50 feet AGL, fly itself to a predefined contingency landing area you picked during planning, and execute an automated landing. What else needs to happen?
Right, so beyond the drone's automated response, which is critical, you as the pilot have immediate human responsibilities. First, you would immediately broadcast a blind call on the local aerodrome traffic frequency, ATF if there is one. You'd announce something like, attention traffic, unmanned aircraft, lost link vicinity of location, last known altitude, proceeding to contingency landing at location.
Okay, warn other pilots.
Exactly. You'd also immediately inform NAV drone of the incident through their reporting system. Critically, you'd confirm with your visual observer, who should still have the drone in sight, given that 2N MCAP we talked about, that they are actively scanning the airspace around the drone's location and its path to the contingency site. They need to be ready to manually terminate the flight if your system allows for that, and it's in your procedures should an immediate unpredicted threat appear that the autonomous system might not handle, like a low-flying aircraft appearing suddenly near the landing zone.
Wow, okay. So it demonstrates how DAA integrates not just with active detection, but also with these pre-planned, predictable, safe behaviors when things go wrong. You're preventing your drone from becoming an uncontrolled drifting hazard.
Precisely. Safe failure modes are a key part of the overall DAA safety case.
Moving on, you mentioned mission geometry and environmental factors are absolutely crucial compliance checks for DAA. You can't just ignore the hills or buildings around you. They directly impact your ability to detect, especially with VOs.
Indeed. Factors like terrain masking, where hills or even tall buildings block your VO's line of sight, or visual obstructions like dense stands of trees or large construction cranes, these are critical considerations for DAA compliance, particularly with vision-based operations under Standard 923. A visual observer positioned strategically on a hilltop, for example, will naturally have a much wider, clearer field of view and be able to see further than one positioned low down in a valley.
And you have to remember that incredibly strict visual obstruction limit from Standard 923.
Exactly. Any obstructions in the VO's assigned scanning quadrant cannot exceed 5 degrees above the horizon. Remember the half-fist rule. It's not just a guideline, it's a hard limit for compliance.
That 5-degree limit sounds like it could be easily breached in many real-world situations. Have you seen operators struggle with this, say, during a power line inspection in mountainous terrain where nearby hills definitely create more than a 7-degree obstruction in the VO's view?
Oh, absolutely. We frequently see this challenge, especially in complex or hilly terrain. In that exact scenario you describe, inspecting power lines where hills create a visual obstruction greater than 7 degrees in your VO's quadrant, you would be in direct violation of Standard 923's half 5-degree obstruction rule.
So what do you do then?
Your immediate action would have to be one of a few things. Either reposition your visual observer onto higher ground or a different vantage point where they have a clear view below that 5-degree limit. Or, if you have it available and approved for that scenario, switch your operation to rely on a declared DAA system under 922.10, which doesn't depend on visual line of sight in the same way, or simply stop the operation in that specific area until conditions allow for compliance. Local topography and structures can absolutely make or break your ability to comply with vision-based DAA regulations.
Or maybe a different example. Monitoring a construction site on the edge of town. A new tall crane gets erected and it rises, say, 10 degrees above the horizon in your VO's primary field of view.
Again, that breaches the 5-degree rule, even though it's a static known obstacle. Your options would be similar. You'd have to move the VO to a different location where the crane is no longer such a significant obstruction in their scan sector. Or utilize a declared DAA system if your RPAS is equipped and your OM approves it for that environment. Or potentially, if the mission absolutely cannot meet the standard envelope and is critical, you might have to file for a Special Flight Operations Certificate, SFOC, to request a specific deviation or operational approval with alternative mitigations. It really highlights that even static obstacles must be meticulously factored into your obstruction geometry during pre-flight planning for Standard 923.
What about marginal weather conditions? Do those BVLOS baseline limits, the 3 miles visibility clear of cloud, always apply strictly? Or is there any wiggle room, maybe depending on the situation?
For vision-based DAA under Standard 923, they are hard limits. There's essentially no wiggle room built into that standard itself. The BVLOS baseline weather of greater than or equal to 3 statute miles visibility and being clear of cloud is non-negotiable if you're operating under 923.
So if you're doing that crop survey we mentioned, and the visibility unexpectedly drops from, say, 5 miles down to 2.8 statute miles because some mist rolls in,
you cannot legally continue flying under Standard 923. You'd have to immediately terminate the flight segment and wait for conditions to improve back above 3 SM. The only way you could potentially continue in that 2.8 SM visibility would be if you were operating under a declared DAA system compliant with Standard 922.10, and your approved operations manual explicitly authorizes operations in lower visibility conditions, perhaps with additional mitigations. Or if you held a specific SFOC that granted such an exception for that particular operation. Otherwise, under 923, you must stop.
Okay, so the rules are the rules, especially for 923. Let's quickly recap some of those common misconceptions that often trip people up, maybe because they seem logical but aren't actually correct according to the regulations.
Good idea. First one we hear a lot.
Yeah.
A VO lets me fly my drone as far as I want or as far as the radio link reaches. Busted. As we said, there are hard caps. 4 nautical miles max from the RPA to the pilot and 2 nautical miles max from the RPA to the nearest visual observer under Standard 923.
Right. Next myth.
Having a VO means the basic weather minima don't really matter as much. Busted again. The 3 statute miles visibility and clear of cloud requirements are still absolutely mandatory as a baseline for vision-based DAA under 923. VOs don't negate weather rules.
Okay. And the FPV one?
My FPV goggles replace the need for a VO, especially if I have a good wide-angle camera. Definitely busted. A visual observer must still be scanning the sky unaided, always. The goggles are for the pilot's perspective and situational awareness of the drone's immediate surroundings, not for the regulatory requirement of detecting and avoiding other air traffic.
Got it. Now, for those who really want to be prepared, maybe for an exam or just complex operations, what about some less obvious, extra challenging traps or edge cases?
Okay, let's dig into a few trickier ones. First, that sun angle nuance in Standard 923. Examiners love to test not just if you know the rule, but which of the 3 conditions satisfies it. Is the sun outside the quadrant? Or is it 45 degrees or higher? Or is it below the horizon? You need to know all 3 parts.
Ah, so knowing the or conditions is key.
Exactly. And applying it, for example, understanding that dawn and dusk can be particularly tricky. Even with good visibility, the sun's low angle might still be within the VO's quadrant and below 45 degrees, forcing a mission delay or VO repositioning until the sun is higher or has moved.
I've also heard there can be confusion around when new regulations actually become mandatory.
You're right. There's the delayed applicability factor for some new requirements. While the overall Division 6 framework came into effect on April 1st, 2025, some specific requirements, like needing to hold the actual Level 1 Complex Operator Certificate to conduct those ops, are delayed until November 4, 2025. That kind of specific date could definitely be a trick question on an exam.
Good to know. Any other potential exam curveballs?
Well, don't forget the atypical airspace exception, which is referenced in Advisory Circular 903001. Sometimes, operating in certain very specific low-risk atypical airspace environments might actually waive the need for a full 922.10 declaration because the inherent risk of encountering other traffic is deemed extremely low, or other unique mitigation measures are in place. Exam writers often love to test exceptions to the rules, so knowing that AC exists is worthwhile.
Atypical airspace. Okay. What about multiple drones?
Another common point of confusion. A single visual observer cannot automatically monitor 2 RPAs simultaneously just because they're close together. There are specific stringent conditions under CARS 901.203 that must be met, usually involving very close formation flight and specific procedures, or you'd need an SFOC explicitly permitting 1 VO to monitor multiple drones. It's not a default multi-drone capability for VOs.
We've talked a lot about DAA as being tactical, real-time see and avoid, but it fits into a larger safety picture, doesn't it?
Absolutely, that's a key distinction to keep in mind. DAA, as we've primarily discussed it today, is focused on tactical collision avoidance, reacting to immediate threats you detect in real time. However, it's just one layer integrated into a much larger safety framework that also includes strategic deconfliction.
Strategic deconfliction, what does that involve?
That strategic layer involves things you do before you even take off. Thorough flight planning, meticulously checking NOTAMs, notices to airmen for warnings or restrictions in your area, and making mandatory flight plan submissions through tools like NAV Canada's NA Drone web application. These strategic steps aim to prevent you from even being in the same place at the same time as known traffic or hazards. So DAA is tactical, NAV Drone and NOCAMs are strategic. They are separate but tightly integrated parts of achieving overall airspace safety.
And finally, maybe a human factors trap.
Indeed. Let's not overlook simple human fallibility, even in these highly regulated environments. Consider VO distraction. If a visual observer, operating under Standard 923, receives a non-urgent phone call and gets distracted, maybe looking down at their phone and not actively scanning the airspace for, say, 90 seconds, that directly violates the continuous unaided scan rule under CARS 901.20.
Just 90 seconds of distraction breaks the rule.
Yes. A human lapse here, even a relatively brief one, directly equates to a system lapse in a vision-based DAA operation. It leads directly to non-compliance and creates a potentially unsafe situation because for that period, nobody was fulfilling the required detect function. It's a stark reminder that even in human-centric DAA, vigilance must be constant and unwavering. The procedures need to account for potential distractions.
Okay, that was a really thorough look at the current state and the strictures of DAA. It's clear how much detailed thought has gone into these regulations. But now let's lift our gaze a bit towards the horizon. What's beyond just human eyes and the current declared systems? What does the tech landscape look like for the future of DAA?
Yeah, the future of DAA definitely lies heavily in leveraging and advancing technology to augment and in many cases eventually surpass human visual capabilities, especially for routine BVLOS. One key technology already in play, though not a complete solution, is ADS-B, Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast.
ADS-B. We hear that term a lot in manned aviation. How does it work?
Basically, aircraft equipped with ADS-B transponders constantly broadcast their precise GPS-derived location, altitude, speed, identification, and other data every few seconds. Other aircraft or ground stations with ADS-B receivers can see this traffic electronically. Now, in Canada, we have a unique requirement, especially for systems used in certified applications, often demanding dual diversity ADS-D. This means the system needs to broadcast to both space-based satellites like Iridium and traditional ground-based receivers.
Why dual diversity?
Primarily because of Canada's vast remote northern regions north of the 60th parallel, where comprehensive ground-based receiver coverage just isn't feasible. Satellites provide coverage there. In the U.S., by contrast, ADS-B is very common, especially in controlled airspace. But the mandate often focuses on ground-based or air-to-air broadcasts, not always requiring that space-based component.
So it's like a digital beacon for any equipped aircraft, providing this rich data stream for situational awareness. But you said it's not a complete solution. What's the major drawback for us in Canada in terms of drone DAA if it sounds so advanced?
The major drawback, and it's a significant one for achieving universal DAA, is that ADS-B is not currently mandated for all aircraft in Canada, especially smaller general aviation planes, recreational aircraft like ultralights and gliders.
So not everyone has it.
Exactly. Many aircraft, particularly older or smaller ones operating outside controlled airspace, simply don't have ADS-B transponders installed. So while ADS-B provides excellent situational awareness for equipped aircraft, it is definitely not a silver bullet for seeing all air traffic. Relying solely on ADS-B for detection would leave you blind to a potentially significant portion of the traffic out there.
Okay, so ADS-B is part of the picture, but not the whole picture. Beyond ADS-B, what other technologies are emerging or being actively researched and deployed for DAA?
Several other promising technologies are being developed and refined. There's acoustic DAA, for instance. These systems use arrays of sensitive microphones, often combined with clever software, to detect the sound of aircraft engines and then determine the direction of the sound, giving you an audible detection. Companies like Zipline, known for their medical delivery drones, have been incorporating acoustic-based detection as part of their DAA solution.
Hearing the threat, what are the downsides there?
Well, the challenges can include accurately identifying different types of engine sounds amidst background noise, potentially having false negatives if an aircraft sound isn't recognized or is too quiet, and even the drone's own propeller noise, potentially interfering with detection. It's complex signal processing.
Okay. What else?
Then we have radar-based DAA, which is a particularly powerful approach because radar doesn't rely on the target cooperating or emitting a signal. Canadian UAVs, for example, has been actively developing and deploying their Sparrowhawk system. This often combines ground-based radar data with ADS-B data to create a comprehensive real-time air traffic map and warning system around a central ground station.
So radar is truly universal in the sense that it reflects off pretty much anything solid of a concerning size, right? It gives you a much more complete air traffic picture, regardless of whether the other aircraft is broadcasting ADS-B or making noise.
Precisely. Radar sees non-cooperative targets. A well-placed ground radar system like Sparrowhawk can offer significant surveillance coverage, often extending out 10, 12, maybe even more nautical miles, creating an effective bubble of air traffic awareness around the drone's operational area, managed from the ground station.
That sounds great, but what's the catch with radar?
The main downside currently is the logistical complexity and the considerable size, weight, and power requirements, swap of radar systems. While ground-based radar is very effective for covering a specific area, placing a capable radar system directly on most current drones would severely impact their payload capacity, flight endurance, and operational range, making it impractical for many applications today.
Makes sense. Any other tech approaches?
And finally, we've seen pioneering work from companies like Iris Automation, which is now part of Avonics. They initially developed camera-mounted vision systems designed to be installed directly on the drone platform itself. These systems use sophisticated computer vision and AI algorithms to visually detect, track, and classify potential collision threats, offering an onboard, sensor-based visual detection capability.
Like giving the drone its own electronic eyes, it's clear that DAA technology has come a long way from just relying on human see and avoid, but where is it all headed? What's the path forward from here? Moving from these individual special flight operations certificates, SFOCs, we used to need for everything, towards maybe full unmanned traffic management or UTM integration.
It has been an incredible and very deliberate evolution, absolutely. And tracing that history helps understand where we are now. It really started, as you said, with those early SFOCs before the major regulatory changes around 2019. Back then, operators had to individually prove their see and avoid methods and mitigations for pretty much every single BVLOS flight application.
Yeah.
It was very bespoke, very time-consuming.
Right, case by case.
Then came a phase of pilot projects and extensive trials, often involving these emerging DAA technologies like the ones we just discussed, maybe from companies like Iris Automation or others. These projects were crucial because they started to collect vital operational data and performance metrics. That data directly informed the development of the system risk ratios, SRRs, we now see codified in standard 922.10.
So the trials proved the concepts and provided the numbers.
Exactly. Those trials and the data they generated directly led to the game-changing 2025 amendments we've been focusing on today, creating a more standardized, scalable regulatory framework with those two distinct paths, 923 and 922.10.
And NASA has been playing a pretty critical background role in shaping this future, right? Specifically in guiding the development of the performance standards for DAA.
Absolutely. NASA Ames Research Center, through its extensive unmanned aircraft systems integration into the National Airspace System, UAS and LANS project, has been tirelessly working on developing minimum operational performance standards, or MOPS. Importantly, not just for the DAA systems themselves, but also for the ground control stations and the interfaces that UAS pilots use.
So the whole system, including the human interaction, the whole system. They're conducting extensive human-in-the-loop experiments, using sophisticated simulations with real UAS pilots and air traffic controllers to test these systems and procedures in realistic, sometimes stressful environments. Their overarching goal isn't necessarily to build the final definitive DAA solution themselves, but rather to guide the industry with robust minimum performance standards. As they often put it, paraphrasing slightly, who knows what industry will come up with? They might invent something much better than we can conceive of right now. So NASA is effectively fostering innovation by setting clear performance benchmarks rather than prescribing specific, rigid designs.
That makes a lot of sense. Set the target, let industry innovate to meet or exceed it. So looking into that crystal ball, what does the vision for DAA integration look like in the short, medium, and long term? Okay, let's break it down. In the short term, let's say from now, 2025 through maybe 2028, we expect to see much wider adoption of vision-based BVLOS operations using Standard 923. Why? Because it's currently the most accessible and often the fastest path to compliance for many operators, especially for initial Level 1 complex operations. Alongside this, we'll see a slow but steady spread of declared GAA systems as more manufacturers get their RPAS models certified against Standard 922.10.
So VOs lead the way initially, tech catches up. What about the medium term?
Looking to the medium term, maybe from roughly 2028 to 2032, we anticipate DAA will begin to shift significantly. It will move from being primarily human-centric, like VOs, or aircraft-centric, like onboard declared systems, towards becoming increasingly network-centric.
Network-centric, how so?
This will happen through much greater integration with broader unmanned traffic management, or UTM systems. Imagine drones autonomously reporting their precise positions, intents, and potentially sensor data into a digital interconnected system. This system can then perform automated deconfliction, leveraging multiple technologies, perhaps enhanced ADS-B like ADS-B over IP, maybe new drone-specific transponders, integrating ground radar feeds, maybe even cell network data to create a comprehensive, real-time, shared air picture for all airspace users, both manned and unmanned.
Okay, a digitally managed sky. And the ultimate goal, the long-term beyond 2032, sounds like true seamless integration.
That's precisely the vision. Full integration. We're looking at a future where drones are seamlessly and routinely integrated into all classes of airspace, including controlled airspace right alongside manned aircraft, operating under harmonized rules. International bodies like ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, and global regulators are actively working right now on developing globally harmonized DAA standards, conceptually similar perhaps to how TCAS, the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, became a mandatory interoperable standard in airliners worldwide. The long-term vision is for RPAS DAA systems to evolve into certified aviation-grade technology that is fully interoperable, highly reliable, and standardized globally.
Understanding this evolution really helps grasp the why behind the current rules, doesn't it? And helps anticipate where things are going.
Absolutely. Gives you that crucial context, helps you anticipate future requirements for your own operations or business, and frankly, provides you with both industry credibility and deep insight into where this fascinating and rapidly advancing field is heading.
Wow, what a journey. From literally World War I dogfights based on see and avoid to these future network-centric automated DAA systems. Now, let's try and bring it all back down to earth, make it really practical. We should walk through a few scenarios to see how these rules actually apply in real-life, day-to-day operations. And then maybe we can quickly review those memory aids to help it all stick.
Sounds good. These scenarios are designed to reflect common real-world operational challenges and also mirror the kind of nuanced questions you might see on an advanced exam, really testing your understanding. Let's revisit our pipeline patrol at dawn scenario, operating under vision-based DAA, Standard 923. Your RPA is 3.8 nautical miles from you, the pilot, okay, that's within the 4 NM limit. It's 1.7 nautical miles from your nearest VO, okay, within the 2 NM limit. Ceiling and visibility are great, well within limits. However, the sun is very low on the horizon, maybe 10 degrees up, and it's directly in the middle of your VO's designated scanning quadrant.
Action. Yeah. Right. In this situation, you absolutely cannot legally start the mission under Standard 923. You have to wait. Either wait until the sun has climbed much higher, specifically 45 degrees or more above the horizon, or you need to reposition your VO to a different location or assign them a different quadrant where the sun is not a factor. Or, I suppose, you could delay the mission until night, assuming you meet all the other conditions for night flight, like proper drone lighting and VO night procedures. The takeaway here is crystal clear. Those sun angle rules are non-negotiable and apply rigorously. Even with otherwise perfect VO placement and great weather, sun glare can ground you.
Exactly. Next scenario. Helicopter pop-up during ag survey, but this time you're using a declared DAA system compliant with Standard 922.10. You're conducting a precision crop survey, nice and steady, and your sophisticated system suddenly alerts you. Traffic alert. Helicopter 1 mile converging 300 feet AGL.
Action. Okay, even though your fancy system gave you the alert, you, the pilot, must immediately take positive manual control or confirm the auto system is taking the correct action per your procedures. And you initiate your pre-planned evasive maneuver. Typically, you descend rapidly and alter course to ensure you remain well clear, yielding completely to the manned helicopter. Your documented procedures must dictate exactly how you handle such an alert. The takeaway is critical. Declared DAA systems are powerful tools for detection and alerting, but the ultimate responsibility for collision avoidance remains squarely with the pilot. You must always be prepared to take immediate, decisive action based on the alerts or your own assessment.
Well put. How about the power line traverse with terrain masking, again using vision-based DAA, standard 923? You're inspecting power lines running through some rugged, hilly terrain. Your VO team, positioned down at a valley access point, reports back that the nearby hills rising up behind the power line corridor are creating a significant visual obstruction. It's definitely greater than 7 degrees above the horizon in the required scanning quadrant for that segment.
Action. Okay, that situation immediately constitutes a violation of Standard 923's strict 5-degree visual obstruction rule. You have to stop that segment of the inspection. Your options are either find a way to reposition your VO, maybe drive them up onto one of those hills, or find another vantage point where the terrain obstruction is below the 5-degree limit for that section. Or, if you have the capability and approval, switch that segment to be flown under a declared DAA system, standard 922.10, which isn't affected by visual obstructions in the same way, or you simply have to abort that part of the mission until compliant conditions can be established. The takeaway. Local topography is absolutely critical for vision-based DA. That 5-degree obstruction limit is incredibly strict and unforgiving, and you must plan for it meticulously.
Spot on. What about a lost link near a rural heliport? Your RPA is operating, let's say legally under approval, 2 nautical miles from an active rural heliport. Mid-flight, you suddenly lose your command and control link, your screen goes gray, link lost.
Action. All right, this triggers multiple actions based on your pre-approved operations manual. First, the drone itself must execute its automated lost link procedure, maybe. That involves holding position briefly, descending to a preset safe altitude, and then autonomously navigating to and landing in a designated emergency contingency landing area you identified during planning. Simultaneously, as the pilot, you immediately broadcast the lost link situation on the local aerodrome traffic frequency, ATF, if available, warning man traffic. You report it to NAV drone, and you confirm with your visual observer, if using 923, that they are maintaining sight of the drone and scanning the airspace around its path in the contingency landing zone, ready for potential manual termination if a sudden conflict arises during the autonomous landing phase. The takeaway is that DA isn't just about detecting other things. It rigorously includes having and following predefined emergency procedures for your own system failures to prevent your drone from inadvertently becoming the hazard.
Excellent. How about an FPV night ops corridor flight under vision-based DAA? You're flying FTV down a designated corridor at night, your drone equipped with approved anti-collision lights visible for 3 statute miles. Your single VO is positioned 1.5 nautical miles away, has confirmed they can see the drone's lights clearly, and is diligently scanning the dark sky unaided.
Action. Assuming all of the requirements are met, like ceiling, visibility, if applicable, pilot currency, etc., this operation appears compliant under Standard 923. The sun is below the horizon, eliminating glare. The VO is within the 2 nm limit. Crucially, the VO is actively scanning unaided, meeting that critical requirement that FPV goggles on the pilot do not replace the VO's visual scan function. The takeaway is a reinforcement. FTV always requires an unaided VO scan, and this is particularly more critical for night operations, where visual detection relies entirely on their keen eyes, spotting other aircraft lights against the dark sky and interpreting the drone's position from its lighting pattern.
Perfect. Then there's the crop survey and regional weather, again, using vision-based DAA, standard 923. You start the mission with 5 miles visibility, but mid-flight you notice mist rolling in, and your weather station confirms ground visibility has now dropped to 2.8 statute miles.
Action. You cannot legally continue flying that segment under Standard 923. It has that hard requirement for at least 3SM visibility. You must immediately terminate the mission or at least pause operations and wait for conditions to improve back above the 3SM minimum. The only way you could potentially continue is if you were explicitly operating under a declared DAA system, Standard 922.10, and your approved ops manual specifically authorizes operations and visibility down to 2.8 SM, perhaps with other mitigations, or if you held a very specific SFOC granting that exception. The takeaway. Standard 923 has hard weather limits baked in. Declared systems might offer more flexibility if that flexibility is meticulously documented, justified, and approved within your specific operations manual.
Okay, one more scenario that blends rules with risk management. You're planning a flight for a client, and the operational area is quite close to a known active glider club. Your proposed flight time is Saturday afternoon, prime time for recreational gliding. Even if you calculate that you can technically comply with all the distance, visibility, and VO rules under Standard 923 for your operation.
Action. Good professional practice and robust risk management would strongly suggest you should strategically choose to avoid that peak time of glider activity, even if you believe you could fly legally. You might reschedule for a weekday morning, or very early or late on the weekend when glider activity is historically much lower. You should also coordinate with the glider club if possible. The takeaway. True safety, especially with DAA, often involves combining strict regulatory compliance with smart, proactive risk management. It means knowing when and where the inherent collision risk spikes due to other known airspace activities, and planning to mitigate that risk beyond just meeting the bare minimum legal requirements. Think beyond the rules to the actual risk.
Great point. Last one, mid-mission failure. You're flying BVLOS, relying entirely on your declared DAA system, standard 922.1 on. Suddenly, your ground control station displays a critical alert. DAA system fault detection capability degraded. It stopped sending traffic alerts because of a detected internal software fault.
Action. You must immediately abort the mission or initiate your specific pre-approved contingency procedure from your operations manual for a DAA system failure. This might involve returning to base via a pre-planned low-risk route, possibly with heightened VO support if available and part of the plan, or even immediate landing in a safe area. Continuing a BVLOS operation that relies on declared DAA without a functioning DAA capability is illegal and extremely unsafe. The takeaway. DAA system failures, whether they are fully enunciated or detected through other means, require immediate, decisive action according to your approved OM. They are not optional warnings or something you can ignore just for a few more minutes. That safety layer is gone and you must react accordingly.
Excellent walkthroughs. Those scenarios really highlight the practical application of the rules.
Hopefully those help make it real. Now, to help cement all this crucial information and keep it readily accessible in your mind, let's quickly review some of the most effective memory aids and mnemonics we've covered today.
Okay, first, for that fundamental DAA loop, the core process, just remember, detect ASSA. Simple, universal for responding to any hazard.
For the comprehensive operational envelope of standard 923 vision-based DAA, those key numbers you absolutely must recall are contained in 4231005 plus SUNOK. Get those numbers down cold.
The baseline weather for BVLS under 923 can be quickly recalled with BVLS 3C, reminding you that you need at least 3 statute miles visibility and the airspace must be clear of cloud.
That core, unwavering right-of-way principle, the absolute foundation, is encapsulated in yield and clear. That reminds you of CAR's 901.17 must give way, and 901.18 must ensure no collision risk regarding all manned aircraft.
And that incredibly strict visual obstruction limit, no more than 5 degrees above the horizon for your VOs under 923, can be easily remembered as the rule of fives.
And maybe to make it stick in a more memorable, less dry way, you could try to gamify it a bit in your head. Think of your drone as maybe a VIP celebrity trying to get somewhere. The VOs under standard 923 are like its vigilant bodyguards, constantly scanning the crowds, the sky, looking for paparazzi or any potential threats, other aircraft.
Or, if you're using a declared DAA system under standard 922.1, perhaps picture the drone as being inside an armored limo equipped with all sorts of advanced automated sensors and maybe even an AI chauffeur. But you, the pilot, are still the head of security or the personal assistant riding shotgun, ultimately responsible for making the final critical call when danger pops up, maybe overriding the automated systems if necessary based on the full picture.
I like those analogies. And for listeners looking to dive even deeper into the actual regulatory text and foundational documents, what are the key references again?
Right, the core references you want to be familiar with are the Canadian Aviation Regulations, CRRs, Part 9, especially sections like 901.17 and 901.18 for right-of-way, 901.20 for detailed VO requirements, 901.23 for emergency procedures, and of course the new Division 6 sections covering Level 1 complex ops. Crucially, you need to understand Transport Canada Standard 922.10, which outlines the rigorous requirements for declared DAA system risk ratios and failure modes, and Standard 923, which details that comprehensive vision-based DAA operational envelope, the 4231005 plus SUNOK. Don't forget the knowledge requirements syllabus outlined in Transport Canada's TP 15530 document for advanced and complex operations. And for that strategic deconfliction piece we talked about, always use tools like Navi Canada's Navi drone web application for flight planning and authorization requests.
Perfect. And there you have it. We've taken a truly comprehensive deep dive into the complex, absolutely critical world of detect and avoid for drone operations, especially unpacking the exciting and demanding new BVLOS landscape here in Canada.
Yeah, we've really tried to lay bare the 2 main pathways for achieving DAA compliance. the human-centric, vision-based DAA under Standard 923, with all its strict environmental and distance rules, and the system-centric declared DAA under Standard 922.10, with its rigorous risk ratios and detailed system failure mode requirements. And we've absolutely hammered home, hopefully, the non-negotiable priority of manned aircraft and the pilot's unwavering ultimate responsibility for collision avoidance in all circumstances.
Understanding DAA, it's really not just about passing an exam or, ticking a regulatory box. It's fundamentally about operating safely, responsibly, and with the utmost professionalism in an airspace that's only getting more complex and more shared. This deep dive, we hope, has equipped you with the kind of deep knowledge that truly separates surface learners from serious, credible operators. It should give you both confidence and the essential insights to navigate the future of drone flight successfully.
And as technology continues to advance at this incredible pace, and drones become ever more integrated into our daily lives, our commerce, our infrastructure, we're really left with a truly thought-provoking question for the future, something for you to mull over. How do we, as an aviation community, best balance the astonishing precision, the speed, the tireless vigilance of automated DA systems, with the often irreplaceable human intuition, the adaptability, and the ultimate judgment of a well-trained, experienced pilot and visual observer? Consider what this delicate, evolving balance means for the very future of flight, a future where potentially every vehicle in the sky, whether it's manned or unmanned, will need to be, in essence, a highly capable, aware, and responsible sky commander.
That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.